Welcome to the channel, fellow fans of Star Wars. Of course, for this video I'll be going over how powerful is Ahsoka Tano, mainly up to Rebels, so everything up to that point. I won't be focusing too much on Mandalorian given that we still have a lot of expansion to see from the Ahsoka show, so any new feats and scaling etc. from that show I will make an updated video specifically for that version of Ahsoka. But for this video I'll be focusing on her up to Rebels. But before I start, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell as my semester is almost done and I will be posting a lot more often very soon. With that said, let's begin. Intelligence-wise, Ahsoka is a very capable military commander and leader. Her leadership skills is such that Obi-Wan and Anakin already trusted her to lead missions by the first episode of Season 2, and the Thrawn novel itself says that Anakin often left her as a substitute for himself in missions, which not only speak to her intelligence, but also her skill as well. Rex states that she has proven herself on the battlefield dozens of times, and she has extensive military training and experience in all areas, whether it involves scouting, stealth, sabotage, or all-out war. She assisted in the training of the Onderon freedom fighters, and was entrusted by Anakin and Obi-Wan to foresee and advise the entire operation, showcasing how capable of a commander that she had become. She was also an expert detective as showcased multiple times, two notable occasions being when her and Anakin were tasked with finding the Jedi Temple bombers, and when searching for the person who stole her saber, learning a great deal about the Coruscant underworld from Master Terra Kenobi. She was also a tech genius due to Anakin's heavy influence, him being a natural prodigy since he was a boy, a skill which has served her well on many occasions, such as when she repaired a communicator to contact Anakin, whilst her and Barriss were trapped under the surface of Geonosis, saving their lives. She also modifies the wiring so that her message to Barriss is untraceable in Season 5, and overall can easily work as an engineer for the rest of her life if she so chose, instead of being a Jedi as shown in the Martyr's Sister arc. She also has some knowledge of Jedi lore. Whenever she was not on missions, she is sometimes immersed in study at the Jedi Temple, with her having such advanced knowledge of the Jedi arts that by Rebels she was the only one of the 3 Jedi to recognize and partially translate the ancient language of the writings on the Malachor Temple. Ahsoka is a master strategist. Instead of listing all her strategy feats, because there are many, I will talk about her most impressive tactic, which is called the Mag Sable.
I added was the scenes where you see Ahsoka looking at the holographic table. The plan she uses where she rotates the Jedi Cruiser on its side and the Y-Wings fly out from underneath is actually a strategy that I read about in Timothy Zahn's novel, Heir to the Empire. And Grand Admiral Thrawn uses a very similar technique of turning his Star Destroyer on its side to lure the enemy in, thinking that the Star Destroyer is vulnerable. Then he launches all his TIE fighters out from underneath it around, and you basically, it's like a pincher's movement. You capture your enemy by drawing them in.
We've been outflanked. Affirmative.
That a girl, Ahsoka.
I always liked that strategy. I thought that was a really interesting thing to do with that ship.
Ahsoka grew in wisdom and shaped into a much more mature and wise individual over the course of the war. Some of the lessons she learned included the necessity of subtlety from Plo Koon when rooting out the location of Boba Fett and Aurra Sing, a lesson in patience from Master Terra Kenobi, and unlike her master, learned the value in putting her emotions aside for the sake of the mission, as taught by Aayla Secura, and reinforced by Ahsoka herself as she advises Prince Lecha in the Mon Cala arc, and when she puts her own feelings and jealousy aside for Lux and his relationship with Stila Guerrera. She also has some knowledge in politics, as Yoda and by extension the entire Jedi Council had their full confidence in trusting Ahsoka with advising the students of the Mandalorian Academy in the dangers of corruption. And she's a master of stealth and espionage, taking the codename Fulcrum and evading the Empire and by extension Vader for well over 14 years, with them thinking she was dead the entire time after faking her death with Rex. Under Fulcrum, she acted as an intelligence operator for many of the individual rebel cells, such as the Ghost Crew most famously. Overall, Ahsoka is an extremely well-rounded and learned individual with knowledge in various areas of intelligence. Nonetheless, both Anakin and Ahsoka acknowledge that she learns far more on the battlefield than at the temple, and as such, her battle intelligence speaks for itself. As the Ultimate Star Wars Guidebook says, Ahsoka's exceptional Jedi skills lead to missions away from her master early in her apprenticeship. It goes on to describe many of her adventures, and the last sentence says by the time Ahsoka is captured by Trandoshan hunters and taken to Washkar, she possesses the confidence to lead abducted Jedi younglings to fight back against their captors. In an intense battle with Kenobi, she comes up with a plan to break free of the Separatist ship by depressurizing theirs, saving them from having to fight through endless waves of droids for much longer. A proactive plan that highly impressed even Kenobi. She frequently escapes capture or death whenever she knows she may be overwhelmed, as seen when she escapes into the vents when defending against Rex and the clones, when escaping Geonosian possessed clones with Barriss, and in the occasion where no opening is around, she will make one herself, as seen when she carved a circle around herself and Rex to take them to lower ground against the clones, and advise the astromech droids to control the platforms that the clones were on to off-balance them, and keeping her and Rex's job of holding him off less taxing and more efficient, especially considering that they were holding back and not trying to kill the clones. In her chase against the bounty hunter Cato Parasite, she pulled the chair in front, tripping her to finally pin her down. Her coordination with Rex and the clones are near unmatched, as she often acted as cover for the clones whilst they acted as attack. The best example coming from Season 7, where her and Rex juggle between each other, such that she defends and he attacks in perfect timing. And her use of the environment was also shown in Mandalorian, where she uses the mist of the forest to take down troops one by one, taking advantage of the fog and the on and off function of her lightsaber. All of these things speak to Ahsoka's knowledge of her limitations, as well as her environmental awareness, which is all the more impressive given her Togrutan biology, which I will discuss more in the Force Abilities section. Strength-wise, Ahsoka is monstrously underrated. Even as a Padawan during the early Clone Wars, she was ragdolling Mandalorian guards with her strikes, and by Season 3, one-shots commando droids with her kicks. Is seen going toe-to-toe with Trandoshans, really putting in the work against them with the strikes, and even managing to stop a killing blow from Garnak, who logically would be the strongest of the Trandoshan tribe, given that he is the leader. She has also pushed off against Grievous, managing to overpower him, and though this was for a brief moment, it's still very impressive that she was able to accomplish this feat at all against Grievous, given that he has consistently ragdolled Jedi with his strikes, and his entire gimmick as a character is that his cybernetics are designed specifically to be superior to your average Jedi or even average Jedi Master, in order to compensate for his lack of Force connection. But it doesn't end there. In fact, during her fight with Maul in Season 7, she's capable of blocking multiple heavy-powered blows with her Shoto saber. Insanely impressive given that Maul is one of the strongest in the entire verse, specifically trained by Sidious to be the ultimate physical specimen, with a strength that is greater than Grievous's from the head-to-head books, and has even briefly overpowered Savage on a few occasions. Not to mention, Maul is using his saber staff for this encounter, which would increase his leverage for these heavy-handed blows, on top of the fact that he's jumping for most of these attacks, and Ahsoka is doing this with her Shoto blade. Just take that into consideration. So I can't stress how impressive it is that she is not immediately one-shotted or disarmed, and is instead blocking these blows, given all what I have just explained, with her only really reaching her limit when confronted with Vader himself, who was consistently using his strength advantage against her in their duel, with her trying her absolute best to hold him off as best as she can and deflect his strikes. Even then, on at least 2 occasions we see she is able to briefly push back against Vader, similar to what she did against Grievous earlier in the Clone Wars. To put this further into perspective, Ahsoka's fighting style is more kinetic than strength-based. Unlike her master, who favors the heavy-handed Gemso variant, Ahsoka uses both Ataru and the reverse grip of Shien, which sacrifices strength, which is already a disadvantage for dual-bladed Ataru specialists. Nonetheless, Ahsoka compensated for these weaknesses by developing a very high innate strength. Hence, while she's not as easily ragdolled as most others of the same style would, especially considering her opponents, and this really paints the picture that Ahsoka is one of the strongest within the verse. And by the time of Rebels, I would hold her at around the level of Prime Mole in strength, given everything discussed. Speed is easy to scale, as I have explained multiple times in previous videos. The speed of blasters are consistently compared to the speed of light, even in the StarWars.com website. We also see, for example, that Kylo Ren performs a MFTL plus feat. The pilots of Star Wars, basically everyone in the entire verse, is millions of times faster than the speed of light and has that level of reaction speed. Furthermore, the novel Stories of Light and Dark, which is a novel that explores various Clone Wars stories from a different angle, in this case through the eyes of the Padawan Katoomri, who is one of the Padawans that Ahsoka helps train in Season 5 of the Clone Wars, says, "Yes, the Padawan Ahsoka Tano apprenticed to Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker, and pretty much the strongest, fastest, bravest and cleverest Padawan ever." Now, of course, the first statement is hyperbole, given this character has a natural bias to Ahsoka, which the chapter makes very clear. Ahsoka is her favorite Jedi, right? But nonetheless, this still speaks to Ahsoka's reputation, which is really the point of it, that this random Padawan considers Ahsoka to be the strongest, not just the strongest, but the fastest, smartest, all these different accolades that she attributes to Ahsoka. It really speaks that Ahsoka has to at least have performed to an exceptional degree in order for her reputation to be so widespread in the first place. So I think that there is some level of truth within this statement. Ahsoka sliced the two battle droids outside Hondo's cell into thirds. She moved fluidly, almost faster than I could see. A vroom 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 from her lightsabers, and then a clatter as the droid's body collapsed. Before the final head hit the ground, she slapped the control on the door, and it slid open. Ahsoka spun through the air, lightsabers out. She sliced through several droids before her feet touched the ground, leaving behind the wreckage of sparking metal. She has dodged point-blank blasts from Trandoshan's and many attacks from Grievous while trapped in a cabinet as a Padawan, showing that her Togruta and Jedi senses are extremely attuned with the reaction time. One of her more insane speed feats came during Order 66, when she was forced to defend from blasts from clones of the 501st from all sides simultaneously. An insanely impressive feat, given that 90% of Jedi Masters would have easily been killed, and the 501st are canonically the best clone squadron in the galaxy. In Rebels, she fights toe-to-toe against Vader and holds her own very briefly against Maul. Maul having consistently shown previously to be in the same speed range as Dooku and Mace. However, this specific version of Maul and Vader I would consider to be even faster than those characters, given that in the Kenobi series, Vader already shows parity to Kenobi in terms of speed, and they were consistently keeping up to each other. Even when they were back to back, we see that they have the same speed of striking and attacking at each other, so they were very relative in terms of speed. However, Rebels takes place 7 years after Kenobi series, and Vader is now in his prime, whereas Kenobi series Vader is not in his prime. And if you want to know why that is, you can check out my Did Vader Surpass Anakin video. However, whilst I consider the characters to be faster than Mace or Dooku, I don't consider them quite as fast as Anakin yet. Vader hasn't necessarily gotten that level of speed yet, though he has surpassed Anakin. We'll get to that soon. So a good placement in terms of speed would be around the same level as pre-Order 66 Darth Sidious. Her durability and endurance feats include tanking and persevering through electric torture multiple times within the series, remaining conscious despite being shot with a stun blast, and in her final battle against relentless waves of clones, takes a shot to the side and another to her partially armored foot, yet perseveres and continues fighting regardless. She has also persevered through the airborne version of the extremely potent killer disease known as the Blue Shadow virus for several hours, possibly a day, in wait for Anakin and Obi-Wan to finally find and deliver the cure. Ahsoka is one of the most agile characters in the entire verse, especially as a Padawan. Her small slim frame allowed her to slip through many small openings on missions, which often came in handy, most notably during the Citadel mission to sneak into the facility. The following are some of the most impressive agility feats we've seen not only from Ahsoka, but within the entire verse itself. In terms of stamina, she has consistently led and fought in missions that spanned from multiple hours to even days, as evidenced in the entire Citadel arc, which lasted several rotations, fighting an entire army of droids with Obi-Wan for a substantial time frame, and the final arc of Season 7, which lasts almost as long as Revenge of the Sith, which itself has been confirmed to last as long as 4 days within the timeline. So Ahsoka was basically fighting 4 days straight, with little rest in between. What's even more impressive is she uses Ataru, which is notorious for draining the user's energy reserves because of its energetic movesets, and it's often not the best option to use in a prolonged battle. In the case of Ahsoka, however, this weakness is almost completely eliminated given her incredible levels of stamina, as already discussed, and this is supported even further by her greatest feat of stamina during Rebels, where she basically runs a gauntlet against the most powerful Force users of the era, so the Inquisitors, Maul, Vader, and finally the Emperor himself, deflecting a very powerful attack, all of these happening back to back and in quick succession. Ahsoka carried 2 lightsabers, a standard and a Shoto, with skill in various forms of combat. Firstly, the reverse hand grip Shien, which is ideal for defending against multiple blaster-wielding assailants and aim deflection. Makes sense for Ahsoka, given that most of her opponents were blaster-wielding droids. This served as the backbone for her main fighting style, Ataru. Ataru was effective against single opponents, and Ataru practitioners were very adept at outflanking their opponents via superior speed and agility, often striking their foes at the side or from the back. But an equally crucial component of this style was using your entire body as a weapon, extending the user's range of attack beyond just their lightsaber. This would be especially suitable for Ahsoka given her insane martial prowess. Anakin also taught her Gem So and tried to mold her style largely after his own. However, Ahsoka quickly realized that she needed a more fluid and balanced form that suited her best. For this reason, Grandmaster Yoda stepped in and assisted her in developing a skill with Jarkai and how to use both blades in harmony, the ending of this sparring session mirroring the maneuver she uses against Vader in Rebels. This Ataru Blaze Jarkai was now much more dangerous and faster than previously, which was assisted by her use of a Shoto. The Shoto is a small blade which is used for defense and quick slashes. Its shortened length allowing more maneuverability at the cost of reach. Hence, Ataru practitioners operate at their best in wide environments where their maneuverability is put to best use. However, in confined spaces, it is very hard to outflank opponents, and therefore a limitation of Jarkai is a lack of strength options, especially the reverse grip as already discussed. And two-handed heavy blows were impossible to accomplish and difficult to defend against. Users often grew too reliant on both blades and are usually overwhelmed when disarmed of one of these. This would also apply to Padawan Ahsoka, who was overwhelmed by Barriss when only armed with a single blade, though it should be noted that Ahsoka was already suffering a bit of fatigue from having been on the run from Republic troops just prior. Jarkai users were often too focused on lightsaber combat rather than their use of the Force. However, Ahsoka made up for this by mastering Niman, and as such is seen having zero issues with integrated Force attacks, becoming so skilled with integrating them into her overall style that they were often very random and off-balance opponents, even proving effective against Vader in their duel. Nonetheless, Ahsoka's hybrid Ataru and Shien style is ideal for the battlefield, which was elevated even further via her frequent training with the clones. Able to consistently fight through armies of droids, Mandalorians, and even clones. Because of Anakin's insistence that she must be prepared for any battle scenario, she ironically ended up being the best prepared and optimized Jedi for dealing with Order 66. Her frequent training finally paying off in Season 7 when taking on the entire army of 5 First clones, even despite holding back. When it came to dueling, Ahsoka has defeated Pre Vizsla, held her own against the infamous Jedi killer Grievous, with Padawan Kotuni describing Ahsoka's performance as awe-inspiring, and in Season 7 against Maul, she holds off his assault and still clutches the W, despite being disarmed twice. However, it should be noted that Maul was holding back and not trying to kill her at any point in the fight, as shown and stated multiple times even in the Star Wars.com site. Nonetheless, an impressive feat, and I would consider Season 7 Ahsoka as slightly below the level of Phantom Menace Maul. Ahsoka by Season 7 is stated to have grown stronger than when she left the Order, Based on the StarWars.com's website, at each turn she became stronger, more self-possessed, and more in tune with the Force and her place in the galaxy. She upheld the values of the Jedi even when the Order crumbled, and she no longer stood among their storied ranks. Ahsoka let go of everything she feared to lose and became stronger for it. Another semi-impressive showing is in Season 3 when she's under the Sun's influence with a description from the Clone Wars magazine saying, "Under the influence of the Sun, who appears to be a manifestation of the dark side, Ahsoka's deepest fears and passions bubble to the surface, and she becomes a whirling dervish of near unstoppable dueling power." Although Anakin and Obi-Wan are understandably pulling their punches, Ahsoka still battles the pair of them to a standstill. By Rebels, her hybrid style is elevated even further and her skill honed to an absurd level, easily defeating both Seventh Sister and Fifth Brother, ragdolling them both and showing dominance throughout the fight. By this point, Ahsoka is a legitimate challenge to Vader, with Dave Filoni saying as much concerning Ahsoka being the only one suitable of fighting Vader, who was too powerful for the Ghost crew.
In all honesty, I can't put Vader in the story easily because Vader's far too powerful for Kanan and Ezra to deal with. So it gave us a good reason to introduce Ahsoka Tano. Here was a character that had a personal connection to Darth Vader when he was Anakin Skywalker. It's ironic, Anakin taught her to fight much larger opponents than her, someone exactly like Darth Vader.
So right from the mouth of the creator, you have Ahsoka and Vader as a legendary battle, with Vader not being conflicted at all, and is further reinforced by another interview in which Filoni said,
And when he says,
"We need not be adversaries. The Emperor will show you mercy."
that's a lie. There's no way the Emperor is going to show her mercy. And I think that Vader wants to destroy these people. You have to remember that Darth Vader is a different person than Anakin Skywalker at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Vader stands, right, every moment that passes after he says her name and has this moment of recognition between the two of them. It's actually the fact that he sees her and faces her in the eye, face to face, eye to eye, that Anakin Skywalker will retreat deep within Darth Vader. And Vader will say,
"And you will die."
Because Ahsoka Tano to Darth Vader represents everything that maybe perhaps he was wrong about.
The actor for Kanan Jarrus considers Ahsoka to be around top 4 Jedi of all time purely in terms of her fighting skill. And just off the statement and based on the time period she's in, Ahsoka would be contending with Yoda, Anakin, Old Ben or Mace Windu, depending on which of these 4 you consider to be the top duelists in the history of the Order. So just off a mere actor statement, Ahsoka already gets considerable hype. But she's solidly above Old Ben and Mace given her showing against Vader, and I'll get more detail into that soon. Before I move on, there are 2 things I want to debunk. The notion that Rebels Maul is superior to Ahsoka, and the notion that Ahsoka is weak and all her feats are invalidated via her showing against the Magistrate in Mandalorian. Firstly, in the case of Maul, there is only one vague statement in support of him being stronger than Ahsoka, which when stacked up against Ahsoka's multiple clear statements of superiority would hold even less weight. Not to mention that in the original script for Season 2 finale, Maul was going to fight Vader and be killed right before Vader faces Ahsoka, and what this immediately implies is that the Ahsoka and Vader fight was always meant to be more impactful and climactic, both from a narrative point of view and in terms of how the fight itself was to play out. It would make no sense for the writers to have the more climactic fight first. On the contrary, the most climactic fight would be left as the last takeaway from a finale as impactful as this one was meant to be, with Ahsoka putting up a much greater fight than Maul against Vader.
The confrontation between her and Darth Vader is something that I'd thought about ever since we started the character Ahsoka Tano. And I have 21 minutes to do it in. I have all these lightsaber-wielding people, all need their moment to shine. We had to get this story told with speed, but with all the feeling and gravitas that you wanted to have.
Our long-awaited meeting has come at last.
I wanted the lightsaber fight to fulfill everyone's imagination of what this fight would be like. what precedes the lightsaber fight and what follows it is actually far more important. If the emotions driving us to the lightsaber fight, fueling that, get you energized, and if the outcome is dynamic and desperate, then I really have something. I've had two pivotal images for the last 8 years. One is the image of her leaping up onto Darth Vader and striking him.
Furthermore, Maul states that he cannot face Vader alone, and bear in mind that this is based on what he knows of Vader before he even comes to Malachor, so it would apply to a weaker and unarmed Vader than the one Ahsoka fought. Not that Ahsoka is superior to an unarmed Vader, but I do consider her to be extremely close with him given her showing against him on Malachor. Secondly, her showing against the Magistrate is often used to massively downplay her. However, Ahsoka was holding back for this encounter because she wanted to get info on Thrawn's location, and even the character encyclopedia says she demands that Elsbeth reveal the location of her master, Grand Admiral Thrawn. Elsbeth is a worthy opponent, but is no match for Ahsoka's Jedi training. While CS, non-Force sensitives are generally far weaker than Force users, there has always been a few exceptions to this rule. There are many examples of this, especially in Legends, where we have Boba Fett, for example, fighting Vader on equal terms multiple times throughout the continuity, and even in the latest release for Star Wars The Old Republic. There are Mandalorians such as Rika Katin holding his own very well against the Outlander before going down. The Outlander is the most powerful Force user in the history of the Old Republic, besides Valkorion himself and presently Darth Malgus. So that just goes to show, while CS non-Force sensitives are generally far weaker than Force users, there are indeed a select few who can hold their own before being overwhelmed. So by proxy, this showing is more so a good showing for the Magistrate than a bad showing for Ahsoka. Therefore, the Magistrate can be included with those few non-Force sensitives who can hold her own against the strongest of Force users. This makes even more sense when you consider that the Magistrate seems to be an elite follower of Thrawn, and Thrawn has stated that he has continuity plans for dealing with Force users, even one as powerful as Vader. So it would make sense that his most elite warriors would be extremely well trained for fighting against such threats, and Morgan Elsbeth was using a Beskar spear, something that would definitely take advantage of Ahsoka's less strength-based Jedi style, even more so since she was significantly holding back. Given that the Vader of A New Hope is already stated to be more powerful than he ever was in Star Wars Insider, so this would include Nightfall Vader or KFV, with the Vader of Rebels also being stated to be at the start of his prime by the writers, who constantly hype him up with these statements. I would consider Rebels Vader to be relative to the KFV in terms of his overall level of skill. KFV stated to be a level 10, and whilst Ahsoka is not exactly on the level as Rebels Vader, as he clearly showed superiority throughout the fight and the writers themselves said that Vader was her superior, it's very clear that they also stated that she wasn't too far off from Vader, and the fight, as we saw as well, it was a very close fight. So Ahsoka is definitely within that level 9 range, that range with Anakin, Yoda, Sidious, etc. Ahsoka's power growth is even directly compared to Roger Luke Skywalker. So all of this really paints a very clear narrative similar to Luke, that the time gap between Season 7 and Rebels is such that Ahsoka goes from being far below the level of someone like Vader to at least being within the same tier as him by Rebels.
She's extremely skilled. And I think over the years, she's probably had the opportunity to hone her abilities, but there hasn't been as much day-to-day ongoing battling as she was doing in the Clone Wars. So you could say on some level, while she's become more measured, her growth is more spiritual in nature.
Ahsoka has a fighting style that is similar to where we left her in terms of having the two blades, but she's definitely much more in control. She's less impulsive. It may be less flashy, but it's certainly more impactful.
Ahsoka is one of the most gifted and powerful Force users of all time. Her Force sense was extremely advanced, even to the point of being capable of pinpointing and honing in on the exact location of a desired target. This was because of Jedi Master Teres Shinobi, who taught her the value in quieting her mind to prevent her own emotions like anxiety from clouding her ability of sensing the emotions of others, with an incredible spatial awareness to the point of knowing whether Aurra Sing was in the same room or not. She can actively boost her natural senses, such as when she boosted her hearing to listen in on conversations in a bar in the Coruscant Underworld, as taught to her by Jedi Master Plo Koon when investigating for the location of Aurra Sing. As a Togruta, Ahsoka's biology already allows her with incredible spatial awareness directly related to the size of her montrals as she grows into adulthood, which is further elevated to absurd levels when taking her force sensitivity into account. The hollow spaces in her montrals, or head tails, allow Shakti to ultrasonically sense her surroundings, just like fellow Togruta Ahsoka. This means she can perform incredible feats in combat such as evading blaster bolts in midair. Her battle sense as a result is one of the best in the entire verse, consistently sensing multi-directional attacks and are impossible to take by surprise, a perfect combatant for open battlefield against hordes of opponents. As the Clone Wars raged on, so did her strength in the Force, as stated by Grand Master Yoda when concerning her ability to experience Force visions, notably the future assassination attempts by Aurra Sing on Padme. As a telepath, she has conversed mentally with Grogu in The Mandalorian and used Jedi mind tricks on several occasions. She's extremely adept at Force stealth to the point of being able to cloak her presence from Jedi Council members, as implied by Mace Windu when she was on the run from the Coruscant police force.
With her skills, she will be hard to find.
2 teams, we will send. Master Skywalker and Master Plo Koon. With clones, you will go.
And later when hiding from Vader and the Empire, as stated by the Ultimate Star Wars Guide. Her telekinetic abilities perfectly encapsulate her mentality as a fighter, potent and a master of misdirection. In terms of raw potency, a young Ahsoka has moved large objects on multiple occasions, such as a large boulder with Aayla Secura, multiple large debris with Anakin, and most impressively, held back Maul's ship from escaping for a decent time before realizing that she couldn't fully bring it down. Her force pushes and waves are especially lethal, as she has ragdoll Trandoshan's, one-shot commando droids, sent Rift Tamsin flying amidst the high turbulence generated within the water, and even pushed an armed Vader in Rebels. As stated previously, this Vader is considerably more powerful than he was as Anakin, and in the same league as KFV and likewise Yoda already, with Vader being notorious for having an extremely potent force wall regardless of the continuity, and has frequently negged force attacks, which means that Ahsoka being able to affect Vader with her force attacks would at least be relative to him, especially given that this Vader is amped. Further supported by her ragdolling of the Inquisitors, even to the point of outright deactivating their lightsabers, showing that she is too far beyond their level on a consistent basis, and it's why we don't see it being applied often in combat, as there needs to be an insanely massive gap in order to completely bypass an opponent's force defenses in this way. In terms of her skill with the Force, she has slowed her descent when falling from a great distance, used Force deflection to deflect a Mandalorian missile, and has telekinetically manipulated her lightsaber for creating openings in a structure to get to lower ground. She has deflected shots from Trandoshans and other attackers multiple times, perfectly showing how her Ataru mastery of misdirection translated with her combative use of the Force. This also goes back to battle sense, as she would have to be able to sense the exact moment when they would fire the weapon in order to know exactly when to deflect the attack.
You need to remain calm. Think. Feel the intention of the trooper who will fire first.
She created a force barrier to shield herself from being harmed by the shattered glass hurled at her by a possessed Barriss, and isn't afraid of using force abilities like Force Choke to off-balance opponents. It should be noted that her use of Force Choke is purely to off-balance and not to outright kill or end an encounter. She also has the ability of Force Heal, seeing as Kyber crystals are living organisms in the new Star Wars canon, and she was able to heal the lightsaber of the Inquisitor's sixth brother of its red hue from being bled, hence the white lightsabers that we see her with presently. Her by far most impressive feat of the Force comes from her use of Tutor Minis and Force Deflection in tandem against Darth Sidious. For further context, Sidious is using Force Fire, which is an ability that is even more potent and harder to control than Force Lightning. And this Sidious is far more powerful than he was at the ending of Revenge of the Sith, and basically close to the level he is at his peak in Return of the Jedi, given that this is only a short time before A New Hope, and Sidious mostly maintains the same power level throughout the original trilogy. So Ahsoka was deflecting an attack from a far more powerful Sidious, who was using a more potent ability than Force Lightning, which gets even more insane when you consider that she's already partially tired from having just been pulled out from facing Vader, Maul and the Inquisitors back to back just prior. Though Ahsoka admits she cannot hold this power for any longer, it is still an insanely impressive feat that she was able to accomplish this regardless, and may have performed slightly better if she were at peak capacity and not partially fatigued. Sidious has casually manipulated the full power of the Final Order fleet, which is made up of well over 1,000 ships, each capable of destroying a planet, and given that this is a very casual feat for Sidious, that would mean Ahsoka deflecting a much more powerful attack from a not holding back Sidious would be way beyond the solar system plus levels of power. Dave Filoni himself has stated that Ahsoka during this time period is the most powerful lightsider in the entire galaxy, which would include Old Ben and exiled Yoda. So all this makes it entirely undeniable that Ahsoka is easily in the same tier as Grandmaster Yoda at his peak and Revenge of the Sith Darth Sidious in terms of a force potency. All in all, with a physicality that can hang with the best, a level of skill in the same tier as Anakin and Yoda, and as a Force user, she is neck and neck with Grandmaster Yoda himself. Ahsoka Tano easily stands among the very top tiers of the verse. One of the most well-developed characters and my personal favorite female character. And I think it's about time we start putting respect on her name and stop sleeping on her, as I've seen a lot of downplay, especially in the YouTube community.
For me with Ahsoka, it was always important that as a young person she's asking questions and she's not just following, that she can make up her own mind and that she can even go against what Anakin thinks. She has to be an individual. And to me, when you look at the Jedi in the prequel era, the one Jedi that has it most right is Qui-Gon. Because Qui-Gon understands that you can still love someone as long as you don't try to possess them, as long as you can let them go. He is selfless. Ahsoka is on a selfless path. And because Qui-Gon taught Obi-Wan, taught Anakin, taught her, that teaching is in her. She gets the benefit of Anakin and Obi-Wan. Both of them teach her throughout the course of her life. And so she has kind of a nicely balanced view of things, where a lot of Jedi I don't think have that. So Ahsoka's tied to all of that, but she's making her own decisions outside of those character arcs. But I have to look at the whole thing and piece it together and bring it to a conclusion here.
Much growth you have shown, Ahsoka Tano.
With that said, may the Force be with you, and have a nice one.